Alex sighed as he leaned back on his worn-out armchair, sipping a cup of coffee and enjoying the peaceful evening. His small suburban home sat at the edge of a forest, quiet and far from the chaos of city life. The stars twinkled above, their faint glow barely visible through the clouds. It was a night like any other, or so he thought. A faint thud broke the silence. Alex frowned and turned toward the window. Was it the wind? Or maybe an animal? Curious, he set his coffee down and stepped outside, the cool air brushing against his skin. He squinted into the darkness, searching for the source of the sound. Then he saw it. A shadow moved on his roof, sleek and agile. His heart raced as he grabbed the nearest thing for protection, a rusty gardening hoe. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice trembling slightly. The shadow froze, then stepped into the faint glow of his porch light. Alex's jaw dropped. It wasn't a person. Not exactly. Standing on his roof was a tall figure, humanoid in shape, but undeniably alien. Her skin shimmered faintly, a soft silver hue that reflected the light. Her eyes, large and glowing faintly blue, locked onto his. "Alex," she said, her voice calm but carrying an otherworldly echo. Alex's grip on the hoe tightened. "How do you know my name?" he demanded, his voice a mix of fear and confusion. His mind raced with questions. Who, or what, was this, and how did she know him? The alien woman tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "I mean you no harm," she said. Her voice was strangely soothing, but Alex's instincts screamed at him to run. "That doesn't answer my question," he said, stepping back toward the door. "Who are you?" She hesitated for a moment, then jumped down from the roof with effortless grace. She landed silently, standing just a few feet from him. Up close, Alex could see the intricate patterns on her skin, like glowing circuits beneath the surface. "My name is Lyria," she said. "I've been searching for you." "For me?" Alex repeated, disbelief laced in his tone. "Why would an alien be looking for me? You've got the wrong guy." Lyria shook her head. "No, there's no mistake. You're the one I've been sent to find." Before Alex could respond, a sudden flash of light illuminated the sky. Lyria's eyes darted upward, and a look of fear crossed her face. "They found me," she whispered. Alex followed her gaze, spotting strange lights moving above the forest. Panic surged through him. "Who's they?" "We don't have time," Lyria said, grabbing his arm with surprising strength. "If they see me here, you'll be in danger too." Alex pulled his arm away. "Wait, what's going on? You can't just show up and drag me into." Another flash of light interrupted him, closer this time. The sound of humming filled the air, like an approaching swarm. Lyria's glowing eyes met his, pleading. "Please, let me explain, but we must hide now." The lights grew brighter, their hum louder. Alex hesitated for a moment, his mind torn between disbelief and fear. Lyria's grip on his arm tightened. "Inside. Now," she urged, her voice sharp but controlled. Reluctantly, Alex nodded and led her into the house. As soon as they were inside, he shut the door and locked it, his heart pounding like a drum. Lyria immediately moved to the window, peeking out cautiously. Alex stood frozen, still trying to process what was happening. "Okay, time out," Alex said, raising his hands. "Who are you running from, and why are you hiding in my house?" Lyria turned to him, her glowing blue eyes scanning his face. "They're called the Cinder," she said, "a ruthless faction that hunts anyone who opposes their rule. I escaped from them, but they're tracking me. If they catch me, they'll destroy everything in their path, including you." Alex blinked, his mind struggling to keep up. "You're saying aliens are chasing you, and now they might come after me." "Fantastic," he muttered, pacing the room. "This feels like a bad sci-fi movie." Lyria tilted her head, confused by his reaction. "Your survival instincts are unusual." "Yeah, well, I didn't expect an alien visitor tonight, Alex shot back, his sarcasm masking his growing anxiety. Why me? Why come here? She hesitated, her gaze softening. Because your name was in the artifact. Artifact? Alex echoed, narrowing his eyes. What artifact? Lyria reached into a small pouch on her belt and pulled out a strange object. It was metallic, about the size of a smartphone, but its surface was covered in glowing patterns that shifted like flowing water. She held it out to him. This. Alex stared at it, hesitant to touch. What does it do? It's a key, she said, to an ancient power that could either free countless worlds or destroy them. And somehow, it's connected to you. Alex scoffed, taking a step back. Me? No way. I'm just a regular guy. You've got the wrong person. Before Lyria could respond, the hum outside grew louder. A sharp beam of light scanned the yard, sweeping dangerously close to the house. Lyria's expression hardened. They're here. She quickly moved away from the window and turned to Alex. Do you have a basement or a place to hide? Alex nodded, his fear returning. Yeah, follow me. He led her to a small storage space under the stairs. It wasn't much, but it would keep them out of sight. As they crouched inside, the house filled with an eerie silence. The hum of the cinder ship vibrated through the walls. Alex whispered, What happens if they find us? They won't, Lyria said, her voice steady, but her glowing eyes betraying her worry. I won't let them. Alex looked at her, 1,000 questions swirling in his mind. But for now, all he could do was wait and hope that the lights would pass them by. The silence in the basement felt suffocating. Alex sat against the cold, stone wall, his mind racing. Lyria remained standing, her posture tense as she kept her eyes trained on the small window above. The hum of the cinder ship echoed faintly through the walls, making it feel as though they were surrounded. Alex's heart was still pounding from the shock of everything. Are they gone? He whispered, trying to keep his voice calm. Lyria nodded but didn't speak. Her glowing eyes flickered, scanning the shadows around them. The waiting was unbearable. Each second stretched longer than the last. I don't understand, Alex said after a while, breaking the silence. Why me? You say I'm connected to an alien artifact, and these cinder people are after me. But I'm just normal. I'm not some hero or anything. Lyria's gaze softened, and she slowly crouched down beside him. I understand your confusion. But what you don't realize is that you've been chosen. Your name, it's more than just a name. It's a key. Alex frowned. A key to what? A key to the artifact, she explained. An ancient relic from a civilization far older than the cinder. It holds power beyond imagination. And you, your name, your DNA, are part of its prophecy. Alex couldn't believe what he was hearing. A prophecy. This sounds like something out of a dream. Lyria nodded. You're not just connected to the artifact by coincidence. You've been chosen by the forces that created it to unlock its true power. Alex stared at her, trying to process her words. It felt unreal. Why me, though? I don't get it. What's so special about my name? Lyria's eyes glowed a little brighter as she continued. Your ancestors, long before you, played a role in hiding the artifact. The Cinder were not always the power they are now. There was a time when they were just another faction in the galaxy, like many others. But when the artifact was discovered, its energy began to shape the future. Your family's bloodline was tied to the artifact's protection. Alex leaned back, his mind reeling. You're saying my family has something to do with this? I had no idea. My family's just regular people. Lyria gave him a small smile. Regular people, perhaps, but your blood carries the echo of those who protected the artifact before. The Cinder must never find it. If they do, they will use its power to control everything. Alex shook his head, trying to focus. But why didn't anyone tell me? Why wasn't I warned? It was kept secret, she said quietly. The knowledge was passed down in whispers, hidden away from the cinder. It's only now, as the cinder's power grows, that the artifact's location is becoming known. A soft click broke the tension, and they both froze. Alex's heart skipped a beat. The door to the basement creaked open. Was it the cinder? Had they found them already? But it wasn't a cinder soldier that appeared in the doorway. It was a man. Someone Alex had never seen before. The stranger's eyes locked onto Alex, and he spoke softly. You don't know how dangerous this really is to you. Lyria's face tightened in alarm. You shouldn't be here. Not now. Alex, confused and still on edge, turned to Lyria. Who is this? Lyria's voice was firm, but her eyes showed worry. Someone who knows more than he's letting on. The man stepped into the basement, his dark eyes studying Alex with a mix of curiosity and caution. His clothing was simple, but there was something about him, his confident, almost unearthly presence, that made Alex feel uneasy. The air between them grew heavier, and Alex could feel Lyria's unease beside him. Who are you? Alex asked, his voice sharp with suspicion. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced at Lyria, who stood up from her crouch, her body language tense. Lyria, the man said softly, you should have left when you had the chance. Lyria didn't flinch, but Alex could see the muscles in her jaw tighten. And you should have stayed out of this. Ethan. Ethan. Alex repeated, confused. Wait, you two know each other. The man, Ethan, finally turned his attention back to Alex. I'm not here to make friends, and neither is she. You're in far deeper than you realize. Lyria moved between Ethan and Alex, her protective stance clear. He doesn't need to hear your warnings, she snapped. This is not your fight. Ethan's eyes softened, but his voice remained firm. You don't understand, Lyria. The Cinder aren't just after you anymore. They're after him. And once they find him, nothing will stop them. Alex blinked in surprise. What are you talking about? Why would they want me? Ethan turned towards Alex, studying him for a moment before answering. Because you're connected to the artifact. And the artifact has power. Enough to change the balance of the galaxy. The Cinder know that if you activate it, they'll lose everything. Alex felt his stomach tighten. The pieces were coming together, but it made no sense. He was just a regular guy. Nothing special, nothing extraordinary. How could he be the key to something so dangerous? You're lying, Alex said, shaking his head. This is crazy. I don't want anything to do with any of this. Just let me go back to my life. Lyria stepped forward, her voice soft but filled with urgency. You can't, Alex. The Cinder have already found us. The moment you were connected to the artifact, they marked you. If you try to run, they'll find you, and they won't stop until they have you. Alex recoiled, his thoughts racing. His life, which had been so simple just a few days ago, was now entangled with aliens, conspiracies, and power he couldn't even begin to understand. But there was no turning back now. Ethan stepped closer, his expression serious. I know this isn't what you signed up for, but you have no choice. The Cinder are ruthless. They'll stop at nothing to get what they want. You need to come with me, now, before they close in. Lyria's eyes flashed with warning, but she didn't argue. It was clear she trusted Ethan, despite the tension between them. What's the plan? Alex asked, his voice shaky but resolute. He knew he had no choice now. Running wasn't an option, not with the Cinder out there. Ethan nodded, as if he'd been waiting for Alex to finally come to terms with the situation. We get the artifact. We destroy the Cinder's hold on this part of the galaxy. But first, we need to get you out of here. The room felt smaller suddenly, as if the walls were closing in on him. Alex had no idea what he was walking into, but it was clear he was in the middle of something bigger than he could have ever imagined. We don't have much time, Lyria urged. Let's go." With that, the three of them headed for the door. The night outside was quiet, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that danger was closing in. Alex stepped out into the cool night air, the weight of the world pressing down on him. Lyria and Ethan flanked him, their every movement calculated and quiet. The street in front of Alex's house was deserted, but he felt like every shadow held a hidden danger. His mind was still trying to wrap around everything he'd just learned. He was connected to an alien artifact, and now, somehow, the entire galaxy was at risk because of him. "So, what now?" Alex asked, his voice low as he glanced around nervously. "We just walk out in the open." Ethan didn't look at him as he answered. His eyes were scanning the darkened surroundings, alert. "We're not walking out in the open. The Sindar have eyes everywhere. We'll take the back roads, avoid the main routes. They've probably already started tracking us." Lyria nodded in agreement. "The sooner we get to a safe place, the better." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. "A safe place? You mean there's more of you? More people like you and whatever Ethan is?" Lyria's gaze softened. "Yes, there are groups, hidden, scattered across different planets. They're working to stop the Cinder. We need to reach one of these groups before it's too late." "All right," Alex said, trying to steady his nerves. "And this artifact you keep talking about, where exactly is it?" Ethan spoke up before Lyria could answer. "It's in a hidden location. We're going to need to use every ounce of cunning to get to it before the Cinder do. They'll stop at nothing to find it." Lyria shot Ethan a look, but then turned back to Alex. "The artifact is a power source. Its energy can be used for good, or it can be weaponized. If the Cinder gain control of it, the galaxy will fall under their rule." Alex shook his head. "So you're telling me that I have the power to save everyone, just because of some ancient artifact and my name?" "You have more power than you think," Lyria said, "and more responsibility. The Cinder have already started their search. They'll be relentless." They moved through the backyard of Alex's house, avoiding any unnecessary noise. The faint sounds of the city night were distant, but Alex still felt exposed. He couldn't believe how quickly his life had turned upside down. "What do we do once we get to this safe place?" Alex asked, trying to focus on the immediate task. "I don't exactly have much in the way of experience with saving the galaxy." Ethan chuckled softly, his voice quiet but full of a strange confidence. "You won't be alone. You'll have us." Lyria's eyes flicked toward Ethan, a brief flash of something unreadable crossing her face. But then she turned back to Alex, her expression serious. "Ethan's right. We'll figure it out together. We have the knowledge and the resources to guide you." Alex took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. He had no idea what he was getting into, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't back out now. The three of them moved quickly, sticking to shadows as they made their way through the dark streets. Every step felt like it could be their last. Alex's thoughts kept returning to the artifact, the key to an unimaginable power. And to think that his name was somehow connected to it all. After what seemed like an eternity of quiet footsteps, they reached a small, inconspicuous van parked near a narrow alley. Ethan gave Alex a reassuring nod as he opened the back door. "Get in. We're heading to the rendezvous point." Alex hesitated, glancing back one last time at his house, the place that had been his sanctuary. It felt so far away now, like another lifetime. He climbed into the van, with Lyria and Ethan following. The door shut behind them, and the van rumbled to life. As they drove off into the night, Alex could only wonder how his life was about to change forever. The van rumbled through the quiet streets, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Alex sat in the back with Lyria and Ethan, trying to calm his racing thoughts. Everything had changed so quickly. Just a few hours ago, he'd been drinking coffee in his living room, unaware that his life was about to collide with an alien war. Lyria sat quietly beside him, her glowing eyes reflecting the faint light of the dashboard. She seemed calm, but Alex could sense the tension in her. Ethan, on the other hand, was focused on the road, his expression unreadable. The silence in the van was thick, filled with the weight of everything they'd just learned. "Where are we going?" Alex asked, breaking the silence. "What's this rendezvous point you're talking about?" Ethan glanced over his shoulder, his eyes narrowing slightly. "It's a safe house, a place where we can lay low for a while and figure out our next move." Lyria turned to face Alex. "It's not just a place to hide. It's a base of operations for those who are fighting back against the Cinder. They're the ones who will help us reach the artifact and keep it from falling into the wrong hands." Alex nodded slowly, trying to make sense of it all. He'd never thought of himself as someone special, someone who could be part of something so big. But now he was caught in the middle of a galactic conflict, and there was no going back. "So, how does this artifact work?" he asked. "I mean, I still don't get it. Why would they want me involved?" Lyria's voice softened as she answered. "The artifact is not just a physical object. It's a key to a power source that can either save or destroy entire civilizations. It's tied to ancient technology, far beyond anything the Cinder or any other faction has ever encountered." Ethan added, his tone serious. "The Cinder want that power. They believe that whoever controls the artifact will control the entire galaxy, and with their resources, they'll stop at nothing to get it." Alex leaned back against the seat, rubbing his temples. It was too much to take in. One minute, he was a normal guy with a quiet life, and the next, he was part of a war he didn't even know existed. "But why me?" Alex repeated, feeling the weight of the question. "Why is my name on the artifact? How did I get involved in this?" Lyria looked at him, her eyes thoughtful. "It's not just your name. It's your bloodline. Your ancestors were part of a group that helped hide the artifact long ago. Your family's connection to it goes back generations. It's why the Cinder have been searching for you. They believe your DNA is the key to unlocking the artifact's true power." Alex stared at her, his mind struggling to keep up. "So, I'm a descendant of some ancient protectors or something?" "Exactly," Lyria said softly. "Your family played a role in keeping the artifact hidden from those who would misuse it. Now, it's your turn to protect it." For the first time, Alex felt the weight of his responsibility. It wasn't just about him anymore. There were lives at stake. The fate of the galaxy rested on the choices he would make in the coming days. The van jolted as it hit a bump in the road, pulling Alex from his thoughts. He looked out the window, watching the dark landscape pass by. His world had changed forever, and there was no turning back. "We're almost there," Ethan said, his voice low but determined. "Stay alert. We don't know how close the Cinder are, and we can't afford to be caught off guard." Alex nodded, his stomach tightening. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain: his life would never be the same. The van slowed as it turned onto a narrow dirt road, hidden by tall trees and dense bushes. The headlights barely cut through the thick darkness, and Alex could feel the tension rise as they moved deeper into the unknown. His heart raced, and despite his efforts to stay calm, he couldn't shake the sense that something was closing in. "We're almost there," Ethan said, his eyes scanning the road ahead, his grip on the wheel firm. Lyria, who had been quietly staring out of the window, turned to look at Alex. "Stay sharp," she warned. "We're entering Cinder control territory. They could be watching." Alex's pulse quickened at the mention of the Cinder. The thought that they could be so close to the enemy made him uneasy. The gravity of the situation was sinking in. His simple life was gone, replaced by this chaotic journey where every moment felt like a step closer to danger. The van bumped along the rough path, the tires crunching over gravel and loose rocks. The further they went, the darker it seemed. There were no streetlights, no signs of life, just the cold, silent woods surrounding them. It felt as if the world outside had disappeared, and all that was left was the three of them on this mission. Finally, the van slowed to a stop. Ethan turned off the engine, and for a moment, All that could be heard was the soft rustle of the wind in the trees. "This is it," Ethan said. "Get out." Lyria didn't hesitate. She opened the door and stepped out into the darkness, her movements swift and graceful. Alex followed, the cold air biting at his skin as he stepped into the night. The ground beneath his feet felt uneven, and he could just make out the outline of a large building ahead, hidden among the trees. "What is this place?" Alex asked, looking around. "It's a safe house," Lyria replied, her voice low. "A base of operations. We'll meet with others who are working against the Cinder here." Alex's nerves were on edge, but he kept his questions to himself. He didn't have time to ask about every little thing. His focus was on what they had to do next. Ethan led the way, moving with the precision of someone who knew the area well. They approached the building, a nondescript structure that blended in with the surrounding forest. There were no windows visible, and the door was made of thick, reinforced metal. A small security panel next to it glowed faintly, indicating a code was needed. Lyria stepped forward, typing in a sequence of numbers with quick fingers. The door clicked open, and they entered. Inside, the room was dimly lit, but there was a sense of order and purpose. A large table sat in the center, surrounded by monitors and technology that Alex could barely comprehend. A few figures were gathered around, talking in low voices. They all turned to look at the newcomers. One of them, a tall, lean man with short, dark hair, stood up and extended a hand. "Lyria," he said, his voice gruff but welcoming. "You made it, and you brought the key." Alex froze at the mention of the key. He felt like he was being drawn into something much bigger than himself, and yet, somehow, he was the center of it all. The weight of his role in this fight was heavy, and it was starting to feel suffocating. Lyria gave a nod. "This is Alex," she said. "He's the one we need to protect." The man eyed Alex closely, then turned to the others. "Get him settled. We'll need to move quickly." Alex's heart raced, but he couldn't let fear stop him. He had to stay focused. This was bigger than him, bigger than anything he'd ever imagined. If he didn't help, the Cinder would destroy everything. As the others prepared for what was coming next, Alex realized that there was no turning back now. He had crossed the line, and the path ahead would only get more dangerous. But for the first time, he understood that he had a choice: to stand by and do nothing, or to fight. And fighting, he knew, was the only way forward. The safe house was buzzing with activity. Alex sat at a table, still processing everything that had happened over the past few days. He couldn't shake the feeling that the world around him was spinning too fast, and he was struggling to catch up. His life had turned into something out of a science fiction novel, except it was real. There were aliens, intergalactic wars, and now a mission that could change the fate of the galaxy. Ethan and Lyria were speaking with the group of resistance fighters in hushed tones, discussing plans. The others in the room were busy with their tasks, analyzing data, preparing equipment, and checking weapons. Despite the chaos, everything seemed organized, almost as if they had done this 100 times before. Alex, however, felt out of place. He had no special training, no combat experience, and yet here he was, a key figure in a fight he didn't even understand. He glanced over at Lyria, who was speaking with a woman across the room. Her posture was calm, but Alex could see the tension in her eyes. Even though she tried to hide it, she was as unsure as he was about what came next. A sudden beep from a nearby monitor broke his thoughts. The room fell silent, all eyes on the screen. A map of the surrounding area appeared, red dots flashing on it like warning signals. "They found us," Ethan said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "The Cinder. They're closing in." Lyria moved quickly to the screen, her hands flying over the controls. "We need to move now," she said, her voice sharp. "If we stay here any longer, we'll be caught. Alex, we need to go. They'll be here any minute." Alex stood up, his heart pounding. He had no idea what they were about to face, But one thing was clear. They didn't have much time. Lyria grabbed a small device from the table and handed it to him. This is a tracker. It will lead us to the artifact. We have to keep moving if we're going to get to it before the cinder. Alex took the device in his hand, still feeling the weight of the situation. What happens if we don't make it? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Lyria's gaze softened, but she didn't sugarcoat it. If they get to the artifact first, the galaxy as we know it will fall. The cinder will have the power to control everything. A chill ran down Alex's spine. The pressure was suffocating. He wasn't just fighting for his life anymore. He was fighting for the future of every living being. The door to the safe house slammed open, and armed cinder soldiers stormed in, their dark uniforms and weapons glinting in the dim light. The room erupted into chaos. Ethan and the others moved with precision, already in fighting positions. Lyria grabbed Alex's arm, pulling him toward the back of the building. We have to go. Now, she shouted. Alex's legs moved before his mind could catch up. He followed Lyria as they dashed down a narrow hallway, the sound of blaster fire echoing behind them. The rest of the resistance fought to hold off the cinder soldiers, buying them time to escape. They reached a small door at the end of the hallway, which opened into a hidden passage. Lyria led the way, her pace quick and determined. Alex followed close behind, his heart racing, his mind spinning with thoughts of what they were leaving behind. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, the sounds of battle faded away, replaced by an eerie silence. The passage was narrow, dark, and damp, but Alex barely noticed the discomfort. All he could focus on was the flashing red dot on the tracker, which now seemed to pulse with a life of its own. They were getting closer, but as they rounded a corner, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly ahead. Alex's footsteps echoed in the damp, narrow passage as he followed Lyria, his mind racing. He could hear her breathing steadily ahead of him, focused, but there was something about the way her body was tense that told him they weren't out of danger yet. The tracker in Alex's hand pulsed with a faint blue light, guiding them deeper into the underground labyrinth. The sound of their hurried footsteps mixed with the distant rumble of blaster fire echoing from above. The cinder were relentless. They were coming for them. Alex had no doubt about that. How much farther? Alex asked, his voice tight with anxiety. Lyria glanced back at him. Not much. We're getting closer to the artifact. But we don't have much time. The cinder will track us down soon. Alex felt a lump in his throat. The pressure of the situation was getting to him. He'd gone from living a quiet life in a suburban neighborhood to running for his life, chased by a powerful alien army. And now, he was the key to stopping them. If they failed, the cinder would gain control over the artifact, and that meant total domination. Alex had no idea how he could possibly be the one to stop it, but the thought of doing nothing wasn't an option. They'd reached a small, circular chamber. The walls were lined with strange symbols and faint glowing lights. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and on that pedestal sat the artifact, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly glow. The sight of it sent a shiver through Alex's spine. This was it, the source of all their problems, and possibly their salvation. Lyria stepped forward, her expression resolute. "This is it," she said quietly, her voice filled with awe. "The artifact." Alex walked up beside her, his hand instinctively reaching out toward it. He hesitated for just a moment before his fingers brushed against the smooth surface. The moment he touched it, a rush of energy shot through him, and he staggered back, surprised by the strength of the surge. The room seemed to vibrate with the power of the artifact, and Alex felt it. An ancient force, alive and waiting, connected to him. It wasn't just a key to power, it was a part of him now. Lyria stepped back, watching him closely. "You feel it, don't you?" she asked, her voice a mix of wonder and caution. Alex nodded slowly, still recovering from the shock. Yeah, it's like it's alive inside me. Before they could say anything more, a loud explosion shook the tunnel. The walls trembled, and dust fell from the ceiling. Alex's heart skipped a beat. They found us, Lyria said, her voice urgent. We have to move. Now. The sound of heavy footsteps and the unmistakable hum of cinder weapons echoed from the passage they had just come from. Alex knew they were running out of time. The cinder were closing in, and the only way to stop them was to use the artifact. But Alex still had no idea how to unlock its true power. Lyria grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the exit. We need to get out of here before they reach us, she said. As they ran down the tunnel, Alex's thoughts raced. He could feel the artifact's energy humming through his body. But how could he use it? What was he supposed to do? Was he really the one meant to control it? The pounding of the cinder soldiers' boots grew louder, and Alex's heart raced faster. The only thing that mattered now was getting out, getting to safety. But deep inside, he knew the real battle was just beginning. The tunnel stretched ahead, dark and endless, but Alex could feel the pressure closing in. The cinder soldiers were right behind them, their heavy footsteps growing louder with each passing second. The air felt thick with the weight of their pursuit, and Alex's heart raced faster, his every muscle tense as he ran. Lyria was ahead, moving with determination, her glowing eyes focused on the path ahead. Ethan had already sprinted ahead to set up an escape route. Alex had no choice but to follow. The artifact pulsed in his hand, its strange energy still coursing through his veins, but he didn't know how to use it. He didn't know what it was capable of. All he knew was that it had to be the key to ending this war, and it had to be used right, or they would all be doomed. They rounded a sharp corner, and Alex skidded to a stop, almost running into Lyria. She turned to face him, her eyes wide with urgency. The cinder are close. We need to figure out what to do with the artifact, she said, breathing heavily. Alex, you have to unlock its power. You're the only one who can. Alex looked down at the artifact in his hand. It was no longer just an object. It felt like a part of him, like it was connected to his very soul. But how could he use it? How could he unlock something that ancient and powerful? Before he could answer, the loud sound of boots echoed through the tunnel. The cinder were close. Alex's stomach twisted with fear, but his hands tightened around the artifact. He couldn't afford to be afraid anymore. He had to do this. Lyria looked around, spotting an open door ahead. In there, quickly. They dashed inside the small room, barely making it before the cinder arrived. The door slammed shut behind them, and they pressed their backs against the walls, holding their breath. Lyria turned to Alex, her voice tense but calm. This is it. You have to activate the artifact now. The cinder will be here any second. Alex felt a cold sweat bead on his forehead. He stared at the artifact, its glowing surface reflecting the dim light. He could feel its power pulsing, as though it was waiting for him to act. Slowly, he raised it, unsure of what to do. Just focus, Lyria urged. Concentrate. Feel it. It's connected to you. You have to trust yourself. Alex closed his eyes for a moment, trying to block out everything. The pounding of his heart, the sounds of the cinder just outside the door. He focused on the artifact, on the energy that hummed within it. It wasn't just an object. It was a weapon, a force of nature. And somehow, it was a part of him. He reached out, his fingers trembling as they touched the artifact's surface again. This time, the energy surged more powerfully than before, flooding his body with heat. The room shook, and a loud crackling sound filled the air as the artifact's power activated. The door burst open, and the cinder soldiers rushed in. But they didn't expect what happened next. A brilliant burst of light erupted from the artifact, blinding the soldiers. They screamed in shock as the energy overwhelmed them, forcing them back. The walls of the room trembled as if the very foundation of the tunnel was shifting. Alex didn't know how he was doing it, but he was controlling it. He could feel the power radiating from him, from the artifact, and he let it flow. The Cinder soldiers were thrown back by the force, their weapons useless against the energy. Lyria and Ethan stood frozen for a moment, watching the power unfold. The light dimmed, and the soldiers were either unconscious or scrambling to escape. The tunnel was silent once more. Alex dropped to his knees, breathing heavily. His entire body was exhausted, but he had done it. He had unlocked the power of the artifact, and the Cinder were defeated for now. Lyria stepped forward, her eyes filled with awe. "You did it, Alex. You stopped them." He looked up at her, his face pale but relieved. "I didn't know I could. I didn't know what would happen." "You did what you had to do," Lyria said, offering him a small smile. "And now, we have a chance. A real chance to defeat the Cinder." Ethan joined them, his face serious but proud. "The galaxy isn't safe yet, but we've made a dent, and that's more than we had before." Alex stood up, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened. He wasn't just a regular guy anymore. He was part of something bigger. And even though the battle was far from over, for the first time, Alex felt like he could fight for the future. The road ahead would be dangerous, but they had the artifact, and they had hope, and that was all they needed.